everybody. I am just waiting for some people to join. I am coming at you live from my in-laws condo in Florida, and you cannot see the background, but there is a lot of nautical themes going on, including the chair I'm sitting on, which you may or may not be able to see. It has a whale back. So in case you're wondering, the owners of this condo really leaned in on the nautical theme, and everything here is nautical. So good thing it's in Florida. Okay, I'm just waiting for a few more people to join. My name is Kristin O'Keefe Merrick. I am a financial advisor for my family firm based in North Jersey. I service a lot of women, professional women and their families. I do all of their investment management. I do their financial planning, and I generally act as kind of their advisor in life to anything that touches money. So if they have a money question, they call me. And it's a pretty fun job. It's a pretty exciting work. It's really good work. It's problem solving, it's strategic, and it's good, helpful work because people really need this kind of thing. I also do quite a bit of financial literacy work, especially for women. So I focus on making sure that women understand kind of the jargon in the financial industry, kind of understand basics of investing, understand risk and how important that is, in that, how it pertains to investing. And I do all of that through either writing. I do a lot of media. I do things like this where I can get on and kind of talk to women I maybe not have met before. And it is pretty fun stuff. It's kind of kind of fills a bucket for me. So I would encourage you to throw your questions in, please. We are going to go through them, and I'm going to kind of keep my eye on the Q&A. Make sure that your questions go into the Q&A and not into the chat, because I have my eyes on the Q&A and not on the chat, although I'll look at the chat later and I'll wave to you. So we have a few things rolling in right now, and I'm just going to get going. If you need to contact me for any reason, I encourage you to find me on Instagram. I'm at The Girl Who Saves Money. You can also look me up via our website, okeefefinancialpartners.com. I'm also rolling out a new offering of financial courses in the next coming months. So please let me know if you're interested in taking any of them. Okay, so we are going to get down to it. I have someone asking me, I almost don't necessarily want to start on this topic because it's a little dicey, but we're going in for it. We're going credit card right now. And it says, how bad is it if I don't pay off my credit card every month? Well, it's not necessarily bad per se if you like paying interest. And if you like paying interest, then go for it. If you love 24% APR that you pay that compounds on a daily basis, then you should definitely not pay your credit card every month. I would encourage you to, at the least, make sure that you pay your minimum balance due each month. Otherwise, you get charged their crazy fee and everything else. My secondary answer to that is that I would encourage you to pay your credit card every single month in full if you can afford to. Credit card debt is, in my opinion, probably the most debilitating type of debt that you can have, because it does have such a high interest rate, and because credit cards compound on a daily basis. And what exactly does that mean when I say that it compounds on a daily basis? It means that every single day you get charged a little bit of interest, and then that tiny little bit of interest gets added on to the principal of what you owe. And then the next day you get paid on the principal plus that interest, and then the interest gets added, and then it gets added. So every single day you're accumulating more debt, more interest that you then owe that credit card company. So I always say to people, if you cannot afford something, you shouldn't buy it. Please don't use credit cards unless they are an emergency situation, unless you have the ability to pay them back in full each month. That is my primary kind of message to all my clients and to all the people I speak to about financial literacy, that credit cards can really get you in a really bad cycle. And it's very, very hard to manage that debt once it becomes large, because of this idea of compound interest and how high credit card rates are. Okay, so I am going to move on to the next one. I hope that that was a helpful answer. Okay, so there's a few budgeting questions in here, and I'm actually gonna try to kind of condense them to make them one. So I have a hard time with the budgeting questions, because budgeting questions are obviously very personal to each person who's asking them. And everybody has a different way, that the way that their brain works and the way that they can, that they process information. Some people really just love like old school spreadsheets. Some people love apps. Apps can keep them, very, on a budget, and spending is, is very, when you have an app, it'll kind of tell you almost immediately, okay, Kristin, you just spent, $9.99 on 2 coffees at Starbucks. That's part of your budget each day. Some people cannot handle apps and get overwhelmed by them and everything else. So the first part of budgeting is you have to understand how you respond to technology, what technology works for you and what doesn't. I have always approached budgeting from just a good old fashioned spreadsheet. What I do initially is I figure out what comes in every single month for me from an income point of view, minus the taxes. So I get, gross and net are very different things. I may get paid $50,000 a year gross, but of course we all know that I'm not getting paid $50,000 net each year. So understanding what your paycheck looks like, whether it's once a month, twice a month, maybe you get paid weekly. So understanding what comes in each month, and then understanding what goes out each month. And you have things that are called fixed costs, and you have things that are called variable costs. Your fixed costs are the things that no matter what you do to cut back, so to speak, you still have to pay those bills each month. That's your rent, your mortgage, your car payment, your insurance, your phone bills, your cable bill, that kind of thing. These are the things that really don't change all that much month to month. You know that you still have to pay them. Fixed costs are pretty easy to wrap our head around. We all kind of know what those are. If I said to you, hey, what do you pay on your for your rent? You're going to know that answer each month. Okay. The variable costs each month are the ones that change, and they go, and you can't really predict what those numbers are going to be month to month, but you can have a pretty good idea of what they're going to look like, and you can control them. The variable costs are the controlling part of this. So one of the questions on here is, how much money should I actually be spending on fun stuff? And then the other question I have is, what does a realistic budget look like? So I'm kind of combining these two answers by saying to you, the only way you can budget is by understanding A, the money in, and B, the money out. So you have to do a personal audit on yourself and understand what your life looks like, whether it's on a spreadsheet or an app or whatever that looks like for you. And then understanding, after you've paid all your fixed costs, after you've kind of taken care of those variable costs that really don't, that you can't, food is a variable cost. Sometimes you eat more in a month, sometimes you don't. So food, understanding what those costs are, what do you have left over at the end of each month? Now, I haven't really touched on the idea of what I like to call budgeted savings, but if you are somebody who has already accounted for savings each month, well, what can I actually be spending on fun stuff? You should be looking at what's left over each month. And then what do you want to do with that money that's left over each month? Do you want to contribute to a retirement account? Do you want to add to a savings account? Do you have a goal to buy a house in a year? Maybe you just want to maybe create a vacation fund. All those things are feasible, but you should be very thoughtful about where that leftover cash goes each month, as opposed to just kind of letting it slush around in your checking account and then maybe going and buying like a cute sweater that later on you're like, oh, I bought this cute sweater and it's almost spring and I probably didn't need it and I spent $90 on it, and now all of a sudden I could have used that towards other goals that I have. So the answer, the question is a tough one. What should I actually be spending on fun stuff? That is, I think, determined based on what your other goals are. If you don't have any other goals, then technically you could spend all of your leftover cash after you've paid your bills on your fun stuff. That is not a path towards wealth. That is not a path towards creating wealth and generating wealth and saving. So be really careful with this. For in terms of the kind of answering the realistic budget question, I think I kind of I tried to answer the best I can, but a realistic budget cannot start without knowing what you make and what you spend. And I always say, you either have a cash in problem or you have a cash out problem, or you have both. And if you have a cash in problem, which means you don't make enough money, then you need to figure that out, right? So maybe you pick up a side job, maybe you figure out other ways of generating revenue for yourself. If you have a cash out problem, then generally speaking, you probably spend too much. You spend more than you should be making. And trying to figure out where your kind of bad habits lie comes into this idea of budgeting. So I hope that was a helpful answer as I kind of tried to kill two birds with one stone. Okay, so I'm going to answer this as a good one. I talk about money in what I call in my buckets. Okay, so if any of you ever heard me talk before, you've probably heard me talk about money buckets. And my first bucket that I always talk about is your emergency fund. And the question I have here is, how much money should I have in an emergency fund? And the thing is, I can't just say, okay, Sally, you asked me this question and you should have $10,000 in your emergency fund. That is a really hard question to answer, especially to a large group of people. The idea of the emergency fund is that it is there for you to be able to pay your bills if you were to get laid off or lose your job, or something were to happen to you if you had an accident and you couldn't work for a while. How much of your overhead could you cover with your emergency fund? And like kind of the back of the envelope math, people always talk about that magic number. There's no magic number. Okay, there's no magic number. But the answer is, do you want to be able to live 6 months without being able to live on your emergency fund? If so, it goes back to your budget. What's your monthly overhead? How many months? If your monthly overhead is $3,000 a month, then 3 times 6 months, you should be able to have around that kind of money in your checking account for emergencies. If you have a family, if you have a mortgage, if you have a larger life in terms of your finances, then you should have a larger emergency fund, right? So I'm a 42-year-old woman with kids and a mortgage. My emergency fund should be larger than somebody like my 27-year-old sister who has really, no real responsibilities other than like herself and her rent, right? So that's a very different, it's a hard question to answer. The other thing I always say about the emergency fund is, what does your gut say about having cash on hand? Some people like to have a lot of cash and feel really comfortable, and cash gives them comfort. I happen to actually be one of those people. Cash makes me feel safe. And by having a good stack of cash around, I always kind of know that, like, okay, I've got myself covered. Other people kind of live fast and loose, and they will be like, no, I'm good with 10 grand. Like I don't need any more than that. So this is something you should also talk to yourself. Hey, self, hey, stomach, how do you feel about having 5 grand? Maybe my goal should be 10. And it really is a personal thing that you kind of have to answer for yourself. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, so I'm getting a few retirement questions, which is great. So I think I'm going to move maybe off of budgeting a little bit. And although I do have one last budgeting question I want to answer. Okay, I'm going to answer this one budgeting question and then I'll go to retirement. So one of the questions is, what are the biggest budgeting mistakes you see? And I kind of touched on this at the end of my last 2 sentences, but here's the problem. The biggest mistake I see is that you spend all this time, you go and make your cute spreadsheet and you plug all the numbers in and you're like, oh my God, look at me. And then you don't follow your budget. You just are like, oh shit, I just spent all this time and then I just went and blew it out at the club that nobody's going to anymore. So that is part of the problem, is that you have to create this habit around budgeting in order for budgeting to work for you. Habit forming is a really, really important part of budgeting, and it's a really important part of just being, I think, fiscally responsible. Understanding, well, hey, I only have $300 to spend on the fun stuff this weekend, and I've already spent $250. Maybe I shouldn't go out tonight, or maybe I should do something different tonight than what my plans were because I only have $50 left. That's a big one. Blowing the budget is the number one problem. And then also just not budgeting for savings, making sure that within your budget, you have a certain amount of money that is going towards retirement, and then some of that money is going towards your emergency fund, and then some of that is ideally going to your, what I call your middle bucket, which is your investment bucket. Okay. So I hope that that was a good kind of bow that I just put on the whole budgeting topic. Okay, so I'm going to move into retirement, and one of the first questions that I kind of want to start with is how do I know which retirement plan, 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, is right for me? This is a big, robust question, and I appreciate you asking it. So I'm going to kind of try to go through this in a pretty quick way, but in a way that helps you. So that is a bucket, by the way. Anything that's retirement is a money bucket of mine, and I call it your qualified bucket. And that is an industry term that we use, and it really means an account that the IRS has given special qualifications to. So for instance, retirement accounts, IRAs, Roths, blah, 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 all have some kind of tax benefit. And that is why we love them, because we love tax benefits, right? We love tax mitigation, and we love tax deferred and tax-free growth. And that is what all of these provide for us. So let me just break down the difference between an employer plan and things like IRAs. So an employer plan is a 401k, it's a 403b, there's lots of different other kinds of employer plans, but really at the core is that your employer offers you this plan. And then you can make contributions to it. In some cases, your employer will also make contributions to it. The contributions that you make to your employer plan, in this case, I'm going to use the example of a 401k, is a tax, it's pre-tax money. So what does that mean? It means that if you make the max that you can contribute to your 401k each year, if you're under 50 years old, is $19,500. And I got a question before that says, what does it mean to max out your 401k? Should we be doing this each year? What it means to max out your 401k means that you make a full $19,500 contribution to your 401k. And why is that good? If you make 100, I'm doing this for math's sake, $119,000 and $119,500 each year. That's your salary. And you max your 401k. It means that you take $19,500 of that and you put it into the 401k. And then it means that you only pay the IRS on $100,000 of your income. Okay, so what happens is when you make 401k contributions is that it lowers your taxable income, okay, which is good. You pay less on taxes when we have a lower income, right? So that's part one. That is an employer plan. That money goes into an account, into a 401k, and you invest it. You choose the investments, and then over time, that money grows on a tax-deferred basis, which means from the time you contribute till the time you take it out, you don't pay taxes on the growth of that account. That's also a huge benefit. Tax-deferred growth is a really powerful thing, and we love it. And we want to stick with it, and we want to make as many tax-deferred contributions to things as we can. When you are an old lady, that's when you start taking these distributions from the 401k, and that is when you will start paying taxes on them. So you will pay taxes down the road when you're 72 years old, or whatever the age is that the IRS determines when we're all of that age. So those are employer plans. There is the flip side of that is the IRA world, okay? And IRA actually stands for individual retirement account. And so what that means is that it's your account. It's you don't have it with anyone else. It's just yours, only yours. You make contributions to it. You make withdrawals from it. Okay. There are lots of different types of IRAs. So I want to be very clear about this, and you should probably, address this with an accountant or a financial advisor about which one makes sense for you. Okay. But the way I'm going to take a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA, and I'm going to compare them against each other. Okay. A Roth IRA, you put money into the account and it grows tax-free, not tax deferred, which means that you can make up to a $6,000 contribution to a Roth IRA each year. It grows tax-free. And then when you want to take that money out, when you're, living it up in Florida, like my in-laws, you don't have to pay taxes on that money. Okay. That is a really, really powerful thing. The problem with the Roth is that there is an income limit. So if you make above a certain amount of income, you get capped on being able to make Roth contributions. That's kind of a bummer. The flip side of the Roth is a traditional IRA. Okay. A traditional IRA has similar bones to a 401k that you can make a contribution to it. Sometimes based on your income, you can get a tax deduction for your contribution, and then that money grows tax deferred. Now, somebody just popped this in the chat, and it was like, well, hey, what happens if I had an old job and I had a 401k and I don't work there anymore? What do I do with that money? Well, what you can do is you can open up a traditional IRA for yourself. You can call up the company you used to work for, the 401k administrator, and say, hey, it's Kristin. I no longer work at this company, and I want to take my IRA and I'm going to take my 401k and I want to roll it, a rollover into my IRA, my traditional IRA. So over my course of my career working on Wall Street, I worked at 5 banks. And every single time I quit one of those banks, I would take my 401k and I would roll it into an IRA. So over time, all of those contributions that I made to 401ks all ended up sitting in one IRA. Okay, so if you have 401ks out there, living out there, and you're not sure where they are, open yourself an IRA, go find the accounts and move them all in so that there's one bucket, they're all in the same place, and then make sure that they're actually invested, because that is a mistake I see quite a bit of. So there's also, there's a lot of, oh, good question. So somebody just asked me this. So if I go to another company, so if I leave company A and I go to company B, can I take that money from the 401k at company A and roll it into company B? The answer is maybe. You should talk to the administrator of the new 401k and find out if they accept 401k rollovers from other companies. They don't always. So again, that's a choice for you to make whether or not you want to do that. When 401k investment choices are limited, so if there are things that you want to invest in, you may not be able to do that through your 401k. So it might make more sense for you to have an IRA. Okay. Oh, good question, but I'm going to save it till the very end. Thank you for the Women Work Hard question. Okay, so I just want to go through. Okay, so Jennifer asked me a question about advice on kind of survival, on budgeting, other than just budgeting better. What are some questions? What if you get furloughed? What if you get laid off? What happens to you? What are some ways to kind of get through survival? Well, the first thing is do a deep dive, do that personal audit and figure out where, like, are you paying subscriptions you don't need? Are you do you need cable? Can you call up and just cut cable? There's a lot of ways to cut costs. But there's also a lot of ways to kind of pick up side business these days. And there's a lot of opportunities to make, I don't know if childcare is your thing, but plenty of people are looking for people to help them in many, many capacities these days. So I would suggest, if you're not too averse to side hustles and to taking up second jobs, get out there and just make some money, and don't worry about it derailing your career. Just go and make some cash right now. Nobody cares. Nobody needs to you don't need to tell anybody oh, I babysit for the people down the street, but they pay me $25 an hour in cash. Yeah, that's right. That's what we pay. Okay. We're desperate mothers. We pay insane amounts of money to be able to watch our kids. So my point is like, look for opportunities that maybe are outside of your little kind of realm, and look for some money making opportunities at this time. And also just go in and see where your money's going and cut back. That is my advice. Okay, so I'm just reading one of these questions. Is it better to pay back more on loans than required monthly? Ooh, I like this question. Okay. Is it better to pay back more on loans, college or home equity, than required in order to pay off sooner? Or does it help you to build your credit to only pay the minimum for a longer period? This is a very thoughtful question, and I'm glad you asked it. And then I'm going to answer this, and I'm going to finish off on, oh, wait, by the way, somebody just said, how soon do I need to start saving for retirement? And the answer is like now. It doesn't have to be $1 million a day. It does, just do something. If it's $100 a month, you're going to make me happy. Okay. Save something in an IRA. Make me happy, please. You'll be like when you're an old lady and you have all this money in the IRA, you're going to remember me in my in-laws Florida condo telling you to start saving for retirement. Okay. So back to this question about loans. So really quickly on student loans, you have to know what your rates are. If your rates are really, really, really low, in the 3% range, then you can afford to be able to pay, you can pay them on their schedule. If the loans are higher rates, and this goes with home equity loans, this goes for college loans, this goes for everything, you should be making an effort to be paying down that debt quicker if you can, because what essentially you need to figure out is, what else would you be doing with that money if you weren't using it towards debt? Would you be investing it? Okay, so the question is, if you're going to invest money, will you be able to take that money and put it in a market and make more than the interest that you're paying on your loans? I mean, in last year's market, the answer is yes, but that's not always possible, right? You need to understand also how much debt you have, right? Because buying a home, for instance, or building credit, you're always going to have a knock on your credit if you have an enormous amount of debt, right? Your debt to income ratio is an important number. So mitigating your debt is always going to be super important, but to the extent where it's going to impact your cash flow and make you feel sad and poor, then I don't suggest doing that. So that's a big question, and it's a tough one. Okay, guys, I have 2 minutes left, and I'm going to kind of end on my question that somebody asked about what is the Women Work Fucking Hard Network, which is a great question. So my best friend and I started an organization called Women Work Fucking Hard. It's about 4 years old now, which is crazy. It kind of started as like a joke because we obviously called it Women Work Fucking Hard as a joke, and now it's the name of the organization, but whatever. And it started out as something like for us to like throw parties and kind of highlight female founders that we really love. Really like hardworking women who are just, trying to catch a break. And so like our first party, we brought this woman in who did like, she's a esthetician, just beautiful work. And we were like, she's a single mom, like, let's get her some business. So we kind of started the party that way, and it's evolved into something that we didn't really expect it to evolve into. My best friend is a television producer. I'm obviously a financial advisor. We have these two different worlds, but we have really, really strong networks. And so what we've tried to do over the last few years is bring all these networks together and support women and really support founders, business owners, entrepreneurs, and people who are kind of just looking for resources. Like, what are the resources that you need in your life? Do you need somebody to help you with your website? Do you need somebody to mentor you? Do you need somebody to invest in you? Like, great. This is what we try to do, is we try to kind of bring these worlds together of people who need resources and people who are able to provide these resources. And we do it generally in a context of it being a fun, it always has to be fun for us, and it always has to feel natural, and it always has to be just like pure, like, because we all love being together. Networking has always been a huge part of my life. I actually hate the word networking, but being around people has always given me a lot of joy, and throwing parties has always brought me a lot of joy. So what we've tried to do is try to bring these things together. We are starting our salon series, our Women Work Fucking Hard salon series. Our first one is April 13th. And it's going to be really, really special. So if you're interested, go to the website, send us your name. We'll put you on the mailing list, and you'll get an invite to join us. But we're going to have a series. We're going to have one series per month. until we can throw parties again. So that is the end of the session. It was so fast. But again, if you want to get in touch with me, please do at the Girl Who Saves Money on Instagram and or womenworkfuckinghard.com or Elkey Financial Partners, whatever is easier for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope you found this helpful. I'm sorry I talked so fast, but I was trying to answer everything. And I hope you have a great night. Bye, everybody.